Alright, we are back with a new video, and we are continuing with this series of reviewing new Owl House episodes. Today we got Labyrinth Runners, an episode that doesn't have Luce, or Ida, or King, or even Hootie. Instead, we're leaning almost entirely on the supporting cast, with Amity being the only main character to show up. And at its core, you could consider this a Gus episode, I guess, but it's also a Hunter episode, a Amity Willow episode, a Day of Unity episode, a Covenhead episode, and really just a Hexside episode. And honestly, what made me really enjoy this one was seeing all these characters working together to fight off Coven Scouts and save their school. Plus, there's some pretty fun interactions in the middle. So the episode opens with Gus once again getting tricked into doing all the work on a group project, with his partner making sure he was in Gus's earshot when he said he only pretended to be his friend, and this naturally makes Gus pretty upset. As it turns out, this isn't the first time this has happened to him, and given how he's seen as pretty easily to manipulate and he's kind of an egghead, this has led to all kinds of problems with him, but obviously those manifest later on in the episode. And it's established early on that when he's upset, he can create these pretty enormous illusions that are very confusing, but also quite revealing. It's also during the opening that we see more of what's been happening at Hexside, namely we've been seeing the school go all in on students being able to study multiple tracks, but this episode also follows up on Amity and Willow, who are now comfortable enough around each other to consider themselves friends. Interesting stuff. During the day, Gus finds Flapjack the Cardinal and chases him into the auditorium where he stumbles across Hunter. Now it turns out Hunter has been living at the school ever since finding out that Bells isn't really his uncle, but of course he isn't going to say that to some rando. Shortly after, the students are called in for an assembly where we meet yet another Coven head. This time, it's Gray Vernworth, head of the Illusions Coven, who presents himself as a movie director treating his subordinates like actors, which was interesting. Anywho, Gray tells everyone that with the end of the world, a Day of Unity, around the corner, the Emperor's Coven wants them to cut it out with the multi-track studying and be inducted into covens right now. But to ease their minds, he assures them that he'll simply give each of them a fake sigil on their wrists to trick the Coven Scouts into thinking they've already been inducted, but not actually give up most of their magic. Now, Ed is suckered into being the first one to get this fake sigil, but Gus notices that the person giving the sigil is actually a Coven Scout using an illusion to disguise themselves as Gray, and that the quote-unquote fake sigil is actually a real sigil. Now, with the cat out of the bag, more Coven Scouts go up, including the real Gray, who scolds the doppelganger for being a bad actor, and it seems like Gus is in pretty big trouble until he spontaneously creates a giant illusion world that covers most of the school. And most of the rest of the episode is Gus and Hunter trying to avoid capture while the others fend off the Coven Scouts. And I found this segment of the episode a lot of fun. I mean, we get some fun moments between Amity and Willow as they're finally starting to become friends and trying to protect each other. And they get so caught up on trying to one-up each other, of trying to prove themselves to be good friends, that obviously it leads to some pretty wholesome stuff. I also enjoy Principal Bump in this episode, who continues to embrace the multi-track culture Hexside has adopted and defends his students in the face of immense adversity. Even Gray and the Coven Scouts have some interesting interactions between Gray treating them like actors and the Coven Scouts getting fed up with their poor treatment. But at its core, just seeing all these students rally together to save their school and way of life is both entertaining and endearing, which contributed to my overall enjoyment of the episode. But again, we had the main story of Gus and Hunter, with Gus not knowing how to undo the illusion, while also dealing with these personal issues. He tries getting Hunter to open up about his past, only for Hunter to be too embarrassed to reveal stuff. We have Gus getting mad at Hunter and not feeling like he can trust anyone, only for Will to stick up for Hunter, which makes sense considering their bond going back to any sport in a storm. Eventually, though, Gus is caught by Gray, who finds out that Gus visited the Looking Glass graveyard back in through the Looking Glass ruins. He interrogates Gus, causing Gus to crumble under the pressure, and hides inside an illusion bubble. Gus reveals that despite being smart, he feels manipulated a lot, which makes him feel dumb. His friends are eventually able to talk him out of it, being the good friends that they are, and ultimately the students are able to save the day. We also get a quick moment at the end where one of the Coven Scouts quits, finally fed up with Gray's antics, and there's this sense that Bump and the students will have a role to play in stopping the Day of Unity. So on the whole, this was a pretty fun episode. I mean, obviously it gives Gus some needed character development, with us really getting into his insecurities. And the fact that he's able to create these massive illusion worlds fits into the theme of not being able to trust himself, as he's able to create these immersive spaces that feel real, but he knows deep down they are fake. But beyond that, there is him being easily manipulated by others, which makes him makes it make sense given that he's a bit of an egghead. Considering Gus isn't one of my favorite characters, I think this was a serviceable episode for him. But if I'm being honest, what really stands out to me with this episode is the spirit that Hexside displays in standing up to the Coven's scouts, defending their new culture as well. And admittedly, I wish the former detention kids had a bigger role in this. I mean, I understand that they needed to juggle a bunch of other stuff into 22 minutes, even without Luce and Ida present. But still, I felt like they should have gotten a little more than bit parts. But this was still a pretty fun episode, and one that I enjoyed more than I expected. Now, in terms of ranking, I mean, I think this episode's probably going to go middle of the pack. Most likely we're lost in language and witches before wizards are, although I can definitely see this one going up over time. So with that, will do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And I'll be back again next week to talk about the next episode. Stay tuned for that. But for now, that is the video. See ya.